Hello, everyone. Jessica Martin here with Martin Management. I love being able to introduce you to other people in the industry, in dentistry specifically. We do a lot of just general healthcare things as well. And I'm delighted to have Kim McCleskey here today. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Jessica.
And I'm going to do an intro of Kim because she's a very impressive woman. And I don't want to just, I could tell you all sorts of fun things about her from what I know of her, but I want to give you the background too. Kim has 30 years of experience in dentistry, starting with managing and leading large dental practices. She advanced to director of operations, specializing in practice acquisitions, transitions, and startups. In 2013, she founded True North Dental Solutions, focusing on these areas before merging with Avitus Group to create Avitus Dental Management Solutions, which was a full service consulting firm with an in house virtual dental billing division. And now, a dental practice transition consultant and broker with professional transition strategies, Kim is also a certified professional business coach and a member of ADMC, DEN, and ADOM. Her expertise includes practice transitions, startups, speaking, and leadership coaching. Does that sound about right, Kim?
Yeah, it's a lot just because I've been doing this for so long. I know it
Yeah,
sounds like
well,
it's yeah. I mean,
it's
it's kind of
impressive.
hard to succinct put, 30 plus years into what have you done? Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
impressive. It's impressive. You have a lot of wisdom. So I'm so happy to have you here today. I wanted to start off with just a little bit of background about what inspired you to transition from managing dental practices to founding your own consulting and transition companies.
hmm Yeah, great. So, I think for me, I loved dentistry. I loved started out working one day a week, 6 hours in the winter and 4 hours in the summer in the front office of a dental practice, and I liked it. I really kind of got into like the numbers. I actually enjoyed insurance and making the numbers work and figuring out the write-offs and patient balances. Like I really dug all that. Well, I did that for 7 years in that office. I just worked. I got kind of worked a few more days towards the end of that 7 years. But then I found a dental home that I stayed in for the next probably almost 15 years. Probably not quite that long, I guess. But at any rate, I had the opportunity to really learn the business of dentistry, and then kind of just I don't know if it was by accident or what. I ended up managing because I loved people and I loved communicating with people. I loved encouraging people. And over the course of time, my doctor decided that he was going to retire and he was going to sell his practice. And that's when I had the opportunity um, to start sort of understanding what it would look like to build out a group, right? So these four dentists actually, they bought the practice that I was in. They liked me, and they gave me an opportunity to help them grow through acquisitions and de novos. And so it was in that space that I learned so much about growth and how to scale and the do's and the don'ts. There were a lot of those. In the end, that group of dentists, we grew to about 8 locations, and they ended up kind of going their own way, and that was really it was what was best for them, and ultimately what was best for me. That's when I broke off, started my company doing de novos and post acquisition consulting, which was such a blast for me. Um, and I, to this day, I look back at that time. It was like such a professional, as far as professional growth went. That's where I learned the most. And then, of course, merging that company with the Avitas Group, it just, um, yeah, I think that was probably the most another again understanding corporate and what that looks like and navigating that process was just such life lessons. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
No, it does. That's great. I love that how so many of us, get into doing one thing, like it, or find like our strengths in it, and then it leads down another path that we maybe wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought of, years and years prior to that. So
Mhm.
the best things
Yeah.
happen with not a lot of planning sometimes. Sometimes it just happens organically.
I didn't plan any of it. I tore it open and I would walk through it. And I mean, in retrospect, I can look back and just see like I remember thinking in the early transition years where we sold and I was helping this group grow through acquisitions. I'd worked with a lot of brokers and I just felt like there were things that were missing at the time. I knew that those brokers were missing some things. And so I feel like this is one of the it's maybe if I had a superpower, it would be that I understand operations through a transition. And I also understand it, from a buy side and a sell side. So yeah, really
Well, that
useful.
leads me to thinking, you've done this for quite a long time, and the landscape has probably changed a fair amount. So, what would you say are trends that you see shaping the future of dental practice transitions? And like, how should dentists be prepared for what's ahead or what's happening now? Because I've got to imagine that it's changed quite a bit over the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody understands we're in consolidation dentistry. The whole industry is consolidating. And I the way that we look at this is, any industry that ever consolidated um, through private equity, it's all very similar, right? There's a cadence to it that is now like really predictable. We have some known, we can look back and look at the history of private equity and consolidation within an industry. So what we know is that we're probably about halfway through consolidation, expecting it to kind of tap out around the 65-70% of the industry will be consolidated. So that leaves a lot of other dental practices, right, that won't be a part of private equity or corporate, what have you. But it is happening, and we're not going to slow it down. It's going to continue. We probably have another, call it five, 5 to 7 years until we hit that threshold of around 65 or 70%. And so I guess if we're going to talk about trends, I think, like if that piques your interest to kind of, you know, cash out now's an opportunity for you to do that. And there is a sense of urgency if you are looking for an exit strategy so that you could sort of participate in this season where, you know, we're seeing offices that, some of them that are going to DSOs, they're really having great financial outcomes. It's very different than what it's going to look like when we get towards the end of consolidation or when we max out, right? We'll just go back to selling practices the way that it was before. But I think it's just really important to understand the value of your business, no matter if you're looking to exit now or in the next 5, 10 years. Like you need to know so that you can be prepared. And if you're not prepared now is where Jessica Martin comes in and helps you get prepared to be attractive for a buyer, whether that's an individual buyer or a DSO buyer. But that is the landscape of dentistry right now. Trends. And, when we think about it, there's lots of different things that are happening in dentistry right now that are so exciting. I mean, we've got just from technology standpoint and AI and all of those things. But consolidation is, I would say, we're at the height of it now, and we will just sort of be on the down curve now.
What do you think remains for those that don't wish to consolidate? Like there's going to be what you said, 20 to 25% of those practices that remain that aren't, or maybe less than that, I think, that aren't
No,
going
it's
to.
probably like 30. It's probably like 30% of the industry of dentistry that won't consolidate.
Yeah. So what do you
Um,
think? And what does that look like? Like, what are those offices look like?
yeah, I mean, look, DSO has been kind of a four-letter word for a long time now, and rightfully so. When we look at the early years of, just what that looked like in the early years, it doesn't look the same now. And I would be happy to talk to you further on another call about that and about my experience with them. But in the end, it's not for everybody. right? It's just not. I know a lot of dentists who are just like, no, I can't sell to private equity. I can't work for someone else. And there's a lot of those folks. I work with them all the time and I help them find individual, buyers to buy them out, just a straight buyout. That will continue to happen. But even now with consolidation where it is, the individual buyers are still in a very competitive environment with their colleagues, essentially, if that makes sense, because there's there's just not that many practices. When we think about who's going to market with a DSO versus an individual, like most of them are taking advantage of the opportunities right now within private equity, and using your practice as an investment vehicle is a real thing, depending on what your end goal is, right? So yeah, I mean, we will always have practices that are going to be sold just to other practitioners. That will always be there. It's just that that environment right now is very competitive, and I've seen a lot of deals personally where a buyer will tell me, a dentist who maybe has multiple practices, they're growing a platform themselves, and they'll say, hey, I'll pay 100 grand over the highest offer. So it's competitive environment still for those really healthy practices who
Okay.
aren't going to DSOs. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. How do you think your leadership philosophy has evolved over your 30-year career?
Hmm. That's a great question. And actually something that I've thought a great deal about over the course of time. Um, my husband and I have been married for 41 years.
Yay. Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. And we've raised a family, and we've both always been in some form of leadership within work. Um, and we started a nonprofit many years ago in 2007. And so taking our personal philosophies of life, and then it naturally overflows to any kind of work leadership responsibilities. And in 2007 we came up with sort of a, for the lack of a better like description, it was sort of a I don't know, kind of like our logo or our slogan, and that is the 3 E's: to educate, encourage, and empower. And I really brought that into a dental office when I was leading a large practice, because it works. To train them, to give them encouragement, and then to let them go and be successful in whatever it was that we were giving them. So to empower them to do that. So I guess over the course of time, like, it's that to me is just being of service. And when I do that, like, it's just when I'm focusing on that, um, it all comes together, and people, yeah, that's what's made me be able to, run these deals with buyers and sellers that are they're so emotionally charged on both sides. There's just so many things to really consider, and to really help the process and to be of service in that process. Trust me, there's a lot of educating. There's a lot of encouragement going on, and a lot of hand holding, because the stakes are just really, really high. But that's it in a nutshell. Like, I don't have any special sauce other than that.
Well, I
That's
think it's
it.
great. And it sounds like you've carried that throughout your career. It's not like an epiphany you had. It's like that's the foundation that you started with, and it's continued to allow you to be successful. And I love that you and your husband share that together. Like you don't work together, correct? Like in
No,
your,
no, that would have
that's how you're
been.
still married for 40 years, right?
That is it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, there's people that are considering first time practice acquisition. There's people considering a startup situation. You have so much experience in transitions and the purchasing and the selling of a practice. So what would you say to someone that's, new in that arena, that's, a dentist that's considering that ownership for the first time in any capacity? Do you have any advice for that individual?
Yeah, I mean, I think like ownership is it's such a big step. And I think, everybody says this. I'm going to say this, it's not news to anyone, but dentists go to school to learn dentistry, right? To learn how to treat their patients, not to run a business. And for most of my career, it was really clear to me that, they didn't think of their practice as an investment vehicle. They didn't think of it as a business. It was my dental practice. And that's all, that's good, but you need to understand the business of dentistry. And really the only way to do that is to surround yourself with other people who can help you understand a P&L, help you understand what industry standard, all those expense buckets, like what should my business on paper look like? And then how do I track all of that? And that was another thing that I did when I was doing startups was we planned out a 5-year plan, right? All the business metrics, what is it going to take to keep the doors open every month? What do I need personally for my own personal income? All of those considerations, they need to know all of that on the front end. And most likely the best way to do that is to work with a startup consultant who really has the acumen to help navigate that. A buy side representative is also helpful, and there's a lot of folks out there, and I can recommend some. But I only work for a seller. In total, I give a lot of advice to buyers. I give them a lot of direction, but they're not my main priority. Well, they are main priority because without them, I can't get a deal done. But I give them options, right? For lending, I give them options for attorneys. I just point them in the right direction. But I also know that if it's a good deal, if it's a good match, I'm able to help that way. But really educating yourself on the business of dentistry. Don't just think because you have good hand skills that this is all going to be fine. You need to have the right advisors surrounding you.
No, that's great advice. I love that. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think would be helpful for anyone in the transition realm? Like there, whether it's like a timeline that you think, it'd be great to get involved. I'm sure you get into situations with clients where you're like, I wish I could have talked to you 5 years ago or whatever, right?
Yeah,
To help prepare them. But is
yeah.
there anything that you think would be helpful for our listeners to know in terms of that transition piece and when to get involved with someone like you and when to start asking questions and all those things?
Yeah. No, great question. I think really, I think, something that most practitioners don't think about, but the average age of a seller of ours is 45 years old.
Wow.
And so, yeah. But what I would say is no matter what your age is, um, you need to have your business evaluated and you need to have an exit strategy. What is it going to be? Is it going to be, I'm going to work for the next 10 years and I'm going to find an associate and that associate is just going to buy my practice? That is not a plan. That is not an exit strategy. That is not it. But what it really should be in total is how can I build the most attractive, most desired practice that I can so that when I get ready to transact, I'm going to have options. With that though, I mean, if you need to, like, if you have the idea that in the next 2-3 years you're going to transact, maybe 5 years you're going to transact, maybe even 7, 8, 9, 10. Because what I'm saying is have your business evaluated. At PTS, we do that for free. There's no charge. We will take your practice to market for no charge. We don't get paid until they get paid. There's no long-term listing agreements. But if you want to dip your toe in this, this whole consolidation, wave that we have going right now, like now's the time to act and don't wait. Even if you're not looking to transact right away, don't wait. You need to understand what your options are. You need to understand, what the value of your business is. So, and then, hopefully you already know what you need in retirement, what you need out of your practice to retire. Hopefully you already know that. If you don't, um, yeah, seek out some advisors.
Oh, that's good. You do a lot of really good articles. It's so funny because I mean, you and I know each other professionally, and um, it's funny because my husband will actually he'll read articles. I don't know what he's reading, but he's getting, them in his inbox and he forwards them to me, not even realizing you and I know each other. I'm like, oh, that's Kim, and so you do some really
Oh,
great
that's
writing
fun.
about,
That's fun.
educating dentists and, giving them strategies and things to start thinking of these things because like you said, there's not enough forethought in a lot of this. And so the more we can get ahead of it, the more options you
Yeah.
have, the more,
Yep.
the more you can make a great decision for you and your future.
Yeah. That's the message in a nutshell. It really is. Like, just know your business. And in dentistry, we haven't been good about that. Know your business, have an idea of what the end game is going to be for you. If you have an idea, use your practice as an investment vehicle so that you can create some generational wealth. Like, there is opportunity to do that right now. Whereas in the next 5 years, we won't have the same opportunity, which, just that is what it is.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining me today. I always love when we get to chat. We chatted all about hair and things before we started recording, so we could chat all day. But
Yes.
if someone is interested in getting in touch with you and learning more about what you do, Kim, how would you suggest they reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me at kim@professionaltransition.com. Find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. And in the contact area, it has my cell phone number.
Awesome. All right,
Yeah.
Kim. Thanks so much for all the work that you do and for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.